Okay, the main purpose for our meeting here tonight is the sharing of testimonies of healing. This is an informal meeting, so everyone should feel free to offer whatever they have in their experience where God has helped them, be it big, small, none of it is insignificant. If God has helped you, it's an important thing, and we would love to hear about it. Now, for those of you who are on the teleconference, when you're ready to give your testimony, make sure everything's quiet where you are, and then press *1, and then listen for the acknowledgement message that your hand is raised. That lets us know that you're ready, and when we're ready here, we'll call on you. Please keep your remarks within 4 minutes so that everyone will have a chance to offer their testimony. And now I'd like to open the meeting for Testimonies of Healing through Christian Science. Okay, Chardell from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Good evening. I want to thank you for the wonderful service and the readings. They're just so wonderful. I had an experience about a month ago, and I wanted to show my gratitude because of what happened at the end. I was out walking my dog, and I go up a driveway, and I go out onto a fairly busy street. There are no sidewalks, and I fell. But I remembered a practitioner said, demonstrate. So I jumped up and I kept going. I started to cry a little bit, and 2 cars stopped, and I said I was all right, and I was all right. And I went on with the walk, and I got back, and I called later for help. I had a little pain in my leg, and it was diminishing even on the walk because I was thinking about what the practitioner had been teaching us. And the remarkable thing about this demonstration is the fact that it changed my attitude. I no longer walk out afraid. I know that God is watching not just me, but also all the people who are driving, and that everyone is safe in God's keeping. And I am different. And I am so grateful for Plainfield Church for showing me the way. Thank you to all of you, and have a good evening.
Thank you. The Moores from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Tony. When I came to this church, started reading the lessons and really digging into the roundtables, it became pretty clear to me that being obedient and listening to God was one of the center points in Christian Science, and I realized very quickly I had no idea how to do it. My spiritual sense was completely deadened. I'd come from the culture. I knew a lot of the words, and I have to say I am so grateful. I can't believe I've made it this far. Prior to coming to Plainfield, claiming to be a Christian Scientist, I'm so grateful that I have been now properly taught what it means to be obedient. And I want to give gratitude and thanks to the practitioner that I've been working with for many years and all the other fine, strong teaching I'm getting here from others. But specifically about obedience, I find that I'm disobedient when I am not understanding that God is governing in every situation. Many times I'll find that I'm in a situation and I catch myself thinking that I have to do something. And what I really have to be doing is not being disobedient by understanding that God is governing right now. And I'm really learning more and more what that means. Our watches are really helping me understand that God is already in charge and has made and created what is perfect. And so the more I understand and learn that, I'm being obedient to the truth. And the second thing I want to say about obedience that was coming out of these readings tonight, and I use this a lot in my business where I have to make a lot of decisions. the practitioner I work with has helped me understand that when I have a decision to make, it's not like I can just sit there and say, well, now I'm going to wait for an unfoldment. Now I'm going to wait for this idea, to come from God. That's just kind of weird. What I have to do is strive to listen the best I can and make a decision and move forward. But in my heart, I'm striving to listen to God, and that's what's required. And if I take a wrong step, well, it might open up another door and lead me in the right direction. And I'm learning all these things here, and I feel so much more capable and safe following this path. And I owe it all to the teaching that's going on in this church, and none of this would be possible if they did not stand up and become independent. And I'm so grateful for the people that made that stand. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was remembering recently when quite a while ago, a few years ago, I was struck by a statement that was in that week's lesson from Psalms 27. And the statement is this: "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" Well, up to that point, I had never thought of myself as being fearful. I thought I had a lot of courage. But a practitioner in this church was helping me with a few issues. And that week, when I read that statement, I looked deep into my conscience, and I honestly took a look at where I was mentally. And I was flabbergasted to realize that most of what I did every day was done out of fear. I worked long hours at a job because I feared for not being able to pay my bills. I went out of my way to help people everywhere all the time because I feared not being loved. I worked out every day, I guess because I feared that I would be strong or something like that. But it was a real eye-opener for me to see how much I was being driven by fear. And that was when I began to make some fundamental changes. I changed careers so that I could devote more time to church and family. And I stopped worrying about paying my bills. I became more interested in helping those who were genuinely working for God. I lost interest in working out. I really began to fear less and to trust God more. Interesting, Jacob from Costa Rica recently sent us a really good article entitled "Confidence" by Martha Harris Bogue. And in that article, she writes, "Fear is faith in evil. Courage is faith in God." For me, this was an incredibly liberating healing to begin to be freed of much of the fear that I thought was normal and had plagued me all my life. So I'm grateful for the help of that practitioner, for the writings of Mary Baker Eddy. They've shown me that God is not only the strength of my life, He is our very life. And that has helped me to get rid of much of the fear that I brought with me to Plainfield. So grateful for what I'm learning here. Grateful to be here tonight.
Thank you.
We had a storm here over the Saturday night, and Sunday morning when I got up, I found two fire trucks and a police car out in front of my house. So I went down and asked what was going on, and they showed me that a couple of houses down, there was a telephone pole and a tree that were leaning precariously over the street. And the fireman said, well, they are gonna go down and you're gonna lose your power, and it's, you know, it's inevitable. So I said, thank you, and I strutted back in the house. And I was walking in, I could hear very loudly, who said it? And I thought, that's right, who said that? God didn't say that. And I started thinking about how God maintains and sustains every bit of his creation, including that tree and that telephone pole, and that God is the only power, and that can't possibly be interfered with. And so I went off to church, and when I drove back home again, I pulled in the driveway and went back out and said, well, do we have power? And the fireman said, yeah. He said, the electric company is down there replacing the pole, and the tree company is cutting up the tree, and everything's fine. Well, they had to turn the power off for a whole half hour while they switched the wires and the poles and so forth. But that's all that happened. I am so grateful for God's protection, and that everything, no one was inconvenienced, there was no injury, everything worked out beautifully. God's hand was certainly on that. And I am so very grateful to God for his care, and very grateful for everything that I've been learning here in Plainfield, and for practitioner help, and grateful for those readings too. Thank you.
Thank you. Luann from New York, go ahead.
Good evening. In the chapter called Fidelity in Miscellaneous Writing, Mrs. Eddy states, there is no excellence without labor, and the time to work is now. Only by persistent, unremitting, straightforward toil, by turning neither to the right nor the left, seeking no other pursuit or pleasure than that which cometh from God, can you win and wear the crown of the faithful. Over the past month, I found myself in the midst of a battle with mortal propensities of self-condemnation. I started out seeking to demonstrate a provision of God in the form of retirement benefits. I found myself deeply entrenched in a battle I was not sure that I had the strength to get through. Everything got so messed up. The paperwork got lost in the mail because I was disobedient to God's command to mail it certified, and nothing was working out. My ability to persevere was tested, and I drew near to giving up. I combated the suggestion to take medication to help me sleep, as I had not slept more than 2 hours a night since I began this endeavor. I stood against it with what I understood of the truth, and spent the night repenting for my disobedience. Sunday morning, before the roundtable discussion, a very strong suggestion came that I was too tired and should stay in bed and not participate. Also, the suggestion to quit came very strongly, with the added verse, you're not capable of demonstrating anything. You're not smart enough to understand it. With every ounce of fiber in my being, I got out of bed and called in and participated. Precept upon precept, line upon line, a word or a response given in the Bible study, an article from the website, an angel message from God, truth given to me by my practitioner, gratitude for every blessing I've ever received, every bit is the strength of my faith in God. The very thing that the devil could not take from me, what I knew to be true, was no matter what is thrown at me, it will ultimately bring untold blessings and glorify God with faith and perseverance. Yesterday, I made several calls to the retirement system, which went unanswered. I wrote my practitioner who told me to pray before I called and to demonstrate the right time. The message came that now is the right time. I dialed a number, and this time I was put on hold until someone was available to answer my call. I got on my knees and began to pray. Not like I had been praying before with mere words, but this time as a child with an open heart, honestly and with humility, I gave it all to God. I found myself in the arms of God, patiently waiting for me. I could feel the power of His love casting out my fear and silencing my mortal thoughts. I knew, before anyone even came on the line, that the manifestation of God's provision had been made real. A man came on the phone and told me everything was in order and I would be receiving a check soon. Today that provision of God came in the mail. I'm so very grateful for this lesson on the importance of faith. I am grateful for Andrew's reading of the chapter on prayer in Science and Health. I'm grateful for the work that my practitioner put into helping me to grow, and poured forth God's wisdom, which thankfully so did not come too late. Through faith, as small as a mustard seed, strengthened by all of you, adhered to an exalted purpose, demonstrated by unremitting labor, I have been so deeply blessed, and I am truly grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Verna from Arizona, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. I've been working with my mortgage company for a loan modification, which has been dragging on for 7 months. And I've been so disillusioned and discouraged. And this was the third time I had applied for a modification, only to have been turned down the first 2 times, once in 2009 and then again in 2010, before reapplying in March of this year. You know, I was beginning to wonder if I was going to be able to keep my house. I was really getting desperate and discouraged. When I discussed it with my practitioner, she said, put your house on the altar. When you pray, give it to God and be patient. Well, I did just that. When I prayed, instead of pleading to God to help me, begging Him to help me keep my house, I said, God, you know I want to keep my house, but only if it be thy will. It's just a house, Lord, and here it is. I'd like to stay in it, but if I can't, then I know there will be a right place for me. Approximately 10 days or so ago, I received a letter from the mortgage company telling me that they sold my loan to another lender, effective November 1. They acknowledged that they were in the process of my modification. However, if a decision was not made by the 1st of November, I was to contact and deal with the new mortgage company from that day forward. I was really discouraged then, as this has been dragging on since March of this year, and I didn't have any hope that it was going to be resolved in the next 8 days. Well, on Thursday of last week, October 30th, I received a call from my mortgage company that I had been approved for the modification, and although the loan was still being transferred, the new mortgage company would honor the modification. Think of it, exactly 1 day before the deadline, after all those months, it came through. I haven't stopped thanking God. My heart's skipping a beat right now, and I'm just telling it again. I just thank Him every day, and I thank my practitioner for her support in this. And in addition, I've learned a valuable lesson, all in God's time, not Berna's. I'm so very, very grateful, and thank you for those readings. They were beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful for recent help from practitioner with a couple of body pains, learning that they're not physical, but were a result of my negative and my dropped thought and of ingratitude. I'm learning to correct my thinking and not fix matter. Suddenly this afternoon, these pains returned. Just as quickly, the thought came that it's Wednesday, and this is an attack on my Christ consciousness and to work for the service. I really checked my thinking to be sure I was positive and not negative, and staying grateful for everything. I'm so grateful to be learning to check my thought and not be distracted by matter, which is unreal. Problems really are a blessing, and I'm grateful for Mrs. Eddy's Christian Science, and for practitioner help. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet from Georgia, go ahead.
Hi. Thank you so much for the readings and the beautiful testimonies tonight. My husband and I recently took a road trip with friends. When we arrived at our hotel and checked in, we said we would go to our rooms and meet in the lobby and go to dinner. Our room was in an annexed building, so it took us a little time to get there and then to return to the lobby to meet our friends. When we got back to the lobby, our friends weren't there. Their room was in the hotel, so I gave them a phone call and said, we were here waiting for them. And my friend was so upset, she was practically to the point of tears. She told me her room was completely unacceptable. It smelled of mildew, it was small, it was dark. She said she had spoken to the clerk and asked about an upgrade and was declined. She said that she would go to another room. She and her husband would pay more money to have another room. And he said that would be almost double of what you're paying now, and that was not acceptable to them. She said, well, can we leave the hotel and, just go to another hotel? And he said because they had booked online, they would be completely charged for the 4 nights we were staying there. As I was listening to her and she was so upset, I just felt so calm about this situation. I told her not to worry, but that we would see what we could do. I told my husband about the problem, and we walked over to the desk and spoke to the clerk. And he assured us that there really wasn't anything he could do. We talked to him for a while, and I mentioned to him that we understood his position, but that we weren't asking him to do anything that would not be right. And all of a sudden he looked at me and he said, well, maybe there is one thing. He asked me to call my friends and ask to see the room that he had all of a sudden had appeared. And it turned out that it was in the annex that we were in. They checked the room out. It was twice or 3 times the size of the room they had originally been in. It was bright, cheery, clean, and it was just to their liking. And we were all so grateful. I just love the way our Father meets our every need. This seems a little small in the grand scheme of things, but what seemed to be an unsolvable problem that could have derailed the harmonious expectations that we all had of this trip was completely reversed. I do know that every need is met, and I do know that harmony is the law of God. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to see God in action. I'm so grateful for Christian Science. Thank you.
Thank you. Dale D. from Maryland, go ahead.
Oh, I gave a testimony last week, and earlier this week, the symptoms associated with that testimony returned, and I had to stay home from work and was under some stress and called a practitioner. And it was discussed that the case would be handled differently. And during the conversation, I made the comment, I'm willing to take some degree of suffering for spiritual growth. And that sparked the comment that yes, this can only do me good, and also don't let go of an experience until you get a blessing out of it. So I turned to the next day I turned to some sources of inspiration, one of which is the website, and I had been listened several times to the September roundtable discussion on substance. And one of the topics was the pool of Bethesda, and Jesus is asking, would thou be made whole? And one of the aspects of this is like, are we willing to be made whole, or do we have excuses? So I listened to that. I said I really would like to be made whole. I don't just want to return as an individual minus some symptoms. This return as the same individual minus some symptoms. Another topic on that roundtable was Carpenter Watching Point, where we don't try to clean our house humanly. It's going to have to be God that does it. Well, as I was praying about my condition, the power of God fell upon me. I could not just remain in my chair. I had to get on my knees. Also, my approach to God, the impression came to me that my approach to God was mockery compared to truth with a capital T. I did feel like truth had neutralized and destroyed error. I had some aspect of self destroyed, and did feel like some form of demon had been cast out of me. So I would like to mention the wilt thou be made whole. That came true. The aspect of God that's going to take care of self, destroy selfhood apart from God. Those all things did happen. So I'm very grateful for practitioner help and church help. Thank you.
Thank you.
At a recent roundtable, a practitioner said we needed to be sure that we don't resent anyone. I took a look inward and I realized I actually don't resent anyone anymore. And that is definitely a huge healing I'm so grateful for. At the same time, however, I realize I feel resentment towards myself before what I did to have wind up needing to come here, I guess. And I realized that the truth of it is, when I turned from God, there was no other path to take. God doesn't cast anyone into the outer darkness. We cast ourselves. Since that roundtable, I prayed a lot about it. And I just am working on letting all that go. And it's been very difficult because it was something that was very easy to hang on to. But I'm just so thankful for everything that we have here, all the teachings and all the services and everything. It's just, I can't even point to any one thing that is helping me to get over it. It's all of it together is working together. So just so grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you.
Tonight I'd like to give gratitude for something I've learned through Christian Science that is really helping me. For so long, I really didn't appreciate this allness of God. And therefore I believed in the change of weather and the illnesses that are supposed to be associated with them. And as a result, every year around in November, somehow I got the flu symptoms. I really felt so sick. I had fever, blisters, and all that. Year after year after year, it came as if I almost even expected to get sick during that time, these times. Now, understanding that all these discords that come, be it illness, sense of lack or anything, are all hypnotic suggestions and not true at all. Through that understanding, I really felt I was healed, and I was healed because for so long, I don't know the last time I had those kind of symptoms. But this week, somehow, these symptoms started again, and for some reason my thought was, well, it's November, and then I stopped there. But wait a second, this has stopped. This stopped for so long. It hasn't returned. But through what I know now, I know that this is not a return of condition, but the same belief. Mrs. Eddy says in Science and Health that an improved belief cannot retrograde. When Christ changes a belief of sin or of sickness into a better belief, then belief melts into spiritual understanding, and sin, disease, and death disappear. So I've held on to this for this past 2 days really strongly to know that these symptoms are not what happened so many years ago. It's not coming back. It is just a belief, and I have to see it as such, as a nothing, and handle it that it cannot do anything because it has been healed. The Christ power healed this, and it's not going to come back. And then I realized I have a lot of work to do. Well, is this coming so that I won't do the work that I have to do to serve God? And so I took a stand, and I strongly, prayed the way I could with all the passages in the Science and Health and other spiritual truths that I've learned. And gradually today, all the symptoms faded away. And I know that none of it was really true. It's the same belief trying to, resurface after so many years. And what is it trying to do? To stop me from doing God's work. Well, it cannot be done. I'm so grateful that I know that now. I understand it now. So I'm so grateful for everything that I have learned through Christian Science as taught in this church. Thank you so much for your wonderful readings, Lenny and Elizabeth.
Thank you. The Moores from Georgia, go ahead.
Thanks, Bruce. I just wanted to express my gratitude as well for this church tonight. Doing the readings these past couple weeks, it's really become very clear to me that it's no small thing what this church has done, being independent, standing apart, standing up for real Christian Science. Because I've experienced firsthand the ways, these past couple of weeks, the ways that error or animal magnetism has tried to divert or distract, keep me from doing the work that I needed to do. But it's been a really great learning experience for me because, I've learned to become wise to this and to start seeing it for what it is. And then I was telling my practitioner this morning, talking to her, what such respect that I have too for the readers that have been, doing such great work in this church, and knowing what, having a taste of what, moral mind will try to throw at you, it makes me profoundly grateful for what has been done, and grateful that I'm allowed to be a part of it and to have the experience myself and to be able to learn from it. I will say that looking back, especially today, it's been really neat to see how I'm starting to feel that when these things come to me, they don't feel like me. They don't feel like my thought. I had a couple suggestions come today, and it was so clearly not my thought. It just didn't feel like something I would think. And I thought, well, that's really neat, because in the past, things will come to us, and it just sort of feels like part of our thinking. And then we just go down that track of, engaging in that dialogue and just taking it in as us. And this time I've been a lot clearer about keeping it at arm's length. So I'm just very grateful for that, very grateful for this experience. I'm very grateful for Mrs. Eddy, too, for not just her gift of this true understanding of God that she gave us, but also the understanding of how animal magnetism works, unmasking that, and giving that to us as well, so we can know how to stay on the straight and narrow ourselves. I'm also very grateful for working with my practitioner, who also points these things out to me, and points out too when I'm being fooled or duped. It's been an amazing blessing. So thank you all for your testimonies tonight. They've been wonderful.
Thank you. Jeff from North Carolina, go ahead.
Good evening. It's been quite a while since I've been able to call in because of my work schedule, but I am very grateful to be a part of this church and to be able to make use of the practitioners at times. And I had a recent experience where I was experiencing some pain, quite a bit of pain, or to the point where I felt that I wanted to leave work, but I didn't want to leave because of this job was given to me by God, and I felt that it was important to stay. And the practitioner prayed, and I continued to work until the time was over. I went home, I laid down, fell asleep. I woke up and called the practitioner, and then told her how I felt, and then after we hung up, I realized that when I went to get up, that I didn't have any more pain, and then I was able to walk freely without the pain and discomfort. And I'm very grateful for what I'm learning here, and thank you all for your readings and all those that have expressed testimonies this evening. Just wonderful to hear, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
A letter tonight from someone new in Pennsylvania. Dear Plainfield Church members, it occurred to me today what a marvel it is that the Plainfield Church even exists, and that it is because it is the nature of God to provide. Thank you one and all for the wonderful services, Bible studies, roundtables, useful links, book library, audios, access to writings of early workers, the 1910 edition of Science and Health, and the competent practitioners, open and willing to answer one's questions and give needed support. I feel my life and approach to Christian Science is beginning to be transformed through all the good that is being done in and through the Plainfield Church. There are so many beautiful qualities being expressed there, but I would like to mention especially the grace I hear expressed during the Bible studies and the roundtables. Thank you, Plainfield Church members, and thank you, God, for the church and for its members. With appreciation. I was speaking recently to someone about what we call the ring of fire. When you first come to this church, sometimes when you first come into the true sense of science, it can be so exciting, so wonderful. You might have a first few healings. But then comes a time maybe when the healings don't come so fast, or you have to go through a very difficult time. We actually heard about that in a few testimonies tonight. And you feel as if you're being tested. Nothing's happening. But if you keep going, if you keep persisting, if you keep working at it, the light does break and the healing does come. And along with that, as Florence was mentioning tonight, your beliefs fade away and you get this tremendous understanding of the truth. It is well worth that testing time, and this is what we call the ring of fire. And how wonderful it is to hear of those of you coming through that ring and not going back, but going forward with the strength and the help of God. In Mrs. Eddy's article on Faith Cure, which is in Retrospection and Introspection, page 54, she says, millions are believing in God or good without bearing the fruits of goodness, not having reached its science. Belief is virtually blindness when it admits truth without understanding it. There is danger in this mental state called belief, for if truth is admitted but not understood, it may be lost. The work of healing in the science of mind is the most sacred and salutary power which can be wielded. My Christian students, impressed with the true sense of the great work before them, enter this straight and narrow path and work conscientiously. This is what it is about. Entering this path, staying on this path, working out our problems, just as you would work out a math problem. You wouldn't sit and believe it could be done. You would take that problem and you would work it out and you would keep working until you got the answer. When you get that answer, it's a tremendous feeling of victory. It's a victory worth working for, because that victory comes from God Almighty. I am so grateful to learn these lessons here in this church. Those were wonderful readings tonight on obedience. Thank you both for them, and such good testimonies of true spiritual growth. So grateful to be here.
Thank you.